Thank you so much for being with us. This is Bobby and JJ Radio. Our show is entitled Identity Theft. Our first guest is Andy Tawari. He is going to let us know about the concept that most people have never heard about, which is called medical identity theft. Andy Tawari is the managing partner of Tawari & Bell. They're a law firm outside of Bandera in 1604 in Helotes. His focus in law is mainly real estate and business law. He's also the vice president of West East Design Build, which is the design, remodel, and construction firm. He currently serves as the commissioner with the San Antonio Convention and Visitors Commission. And you can get a lot of his nuggets of legal wisdom at his website or his business website, which is texaslegalpros.com/Tawari. That's Texas spelled out. And his last name is Tiwari. Andy, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Great. Thanks for being here with us, Bobby JJ Radio. We want to know a lot about this medical identity theft. Explain it to us, enlighten us. What is this stuff and what's going on?
So first, let me say in some ways it's not a well understood crime because the motivation for someone to impersonate another person in order to get a medical benefit, which is basically what medical identity theft is.
Sure.
It's not really understood from person to person why they engage in that behavior.
Yeah, why would you? Right.
But in short, it's fraudulently taking information, Social Security, name, possibly your insurance information,
right,
either Medicaid, private insurance, and then using it to obtain a medical benefit.
Wow. So they're going around and just pretty much disguising themselves as normal people. But so this is kind of an old school way of identity theft that people aren't so accustomed to now because it's usually now it's electronic.
It is. It's odd in a way that you see the proliferation of medical identity theft in a time when most thieves are sitting behind a computer somewhere.
Sure.
This still requires someone at the end of the day
to leave the house.
Exactly.
Leave the house. That's always
to
tough.
get out of your pajamas.
Yeah. So how does anything else? How does it work? How is this accomplished by these criminals?
Well, in most cases, what the criminal is trying to do is obtain an illegal prescription.
Sure.
Or they're trying to actually get medical care, which is in some ways a little bit scary.
Right.
Or in another instance, and this is a much rarer situation, but there are some unscrupulous providers who have used information to create billing in their favor, and then you end up with some odd outcomes, like all of a sudden you have a psychiatric record that you didn't know about.
Right.
The biggest problem, I think, with medical identity theft is, yes, there is this aspect of it that's financial.
Right.
You could end up with a lot of medical billing out there that you don't know about, but correcting your medical records is probably the biggest headache.
Yeah, because that sticks with you forever, past credit scores and stuff. Yeah.
But let me give you a few examples that I know about.
Sure.
There was a gentleman out of Pennsylvania that was able to secure around $100,000 worth of medical care going from one place to the next.
Sure.
Case with a gentleman out of Colorado where he was stuck with about $40,000+ worth of surgery bills. And then locally, we had a client in Texas whose child was actually the target.
Wow.
So someone else was going through different facilities in Texas and presenting their child as our client's child and obtaining medical care for them.
That's crazy.
Well, the scariest thing about that is, in that instance, this other child had broken bones.
Right.
So what does this mean for my client? Is CPS going to come out?
Right.
I mean, it was really a very scary situation.
Sure, or even having like a predisposition to some kind of stuff that, medical history that you really don't have, I think is probably a big factor when it comes to clearing all that stuff up and how important it is.
So is this a pretty common thing? I've never really heard of this.
Well, I will tell you that I had not heard about it until we got approached to help resolve situations like this, but I was shocked to see that the Identity Theft Resource Center shows this as being occurring around 43% of the time in terms of when medical identity theft occurs. In other words, about 43% of cases are medical identity theft, which shocked me.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot more than I thought.
Well, and I guess it makes sense when I look at some other statistics that show that Health and Human Services has found between 30 and 70 million breaches of healthcare data.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a lot of opportunity for theft.
How can somebody tell if they've been a victim of medical identity theft?
So if you think about it this way, like any other identity theft issue, what a criminal is doing here is exploiting a loophole, or they're exploiting a weakness in a system.
Mhm.
So in order for you to find out that something occurred, it's going to take a little bit of time. There's a couple laws that govern healthcare records. One is HIPAA, the other is high-tech. We'll talk a little bit more about HIPAA.
Sure.
But high-tech basically requires a medical provider or hospital to put you on notice that there's been a breach of your data.
Sure.
The problem is, by the time you're put on notice of that breach, it may be too late.
Right.
It takes time for medical billing to be reported to a creditor, which will then take time for it to show up on your credit report if that happens.
Right.
So the absolute best way for someone to try and protect themselves against this issue is to stay on top of their data.
Gotcha.
That happens in a couple ways. The first is obviously take common sense steps to protect your Social Security information, your healthcare information. People do goofy things like leave their Medicare card in their glove compartment. And
Bobby's always gambling with it. I never thought it meant anything, but he says I raise my PPO, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Is that $20?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think people really are lackadaisical with information.
They are.
And the number one thing you can do is safeguard your data.
Sure.
Then you need to pay careful attention to the explanations that you get back from your insurer and from, if you have a federal aid provider like Medicare or Medicaid, their explanation of benefits.
Sure.
And what I would tell people is don't immediately jump to a conclusion just because you don't know what is stated on the record.
Right. So if you're just joining us, we're with Andy Tawari. He's the managing partner of Tawari & Bell, a law firm in Helotes, Texas, right outside of Bandera in 1604. And we're talking about medical identity theft. So, Andy, how can this be corrected? How can all this identity theft, what's the easiest path of correction?
Well, Adam is here with us, and
Adam Hetrick, right.
He's going to talk, I'm sure, a little bit more about generally taking steps to correct problems with identity theft. And
Sure.
really, the first steps in the process are going to be very similar. You've got to file a police report. You need to notify the Social Security Administration.
Right.
What is unique in medical identity theft is if you have private insurance, most insurers will have a fraud department.
Okay.
And you need to contact that fraud department and tell them that this is not just an accident, this is not you, that there is an issue going on.
Right.
But of course, they're going to want that police report and other data from you in order to initiate anything. The second thing is you need to put the insurer on notice, please red flag my account.
Okay.
Because if someone else goes to obtain benefits using your insurance,
You wanted to stop.
you want them to call you.
Right.
Now, it's not perfect. The perfect solution, if someone has used your private insurance, is to cancel the policy. But I'm sure a healthcare insurance provider will tell you that is a headache.
Yeah.
A, you can lose grandfathered benefits, and B, well, I mean, you've got to get a whole new policy. There's going to be a lapse in coverage most likely. So if you don't want to cancel your policy and get a new one, the main thing that you need to do is contact the insurance company. You also need to contact the Texas Department of Insurance. And they have a fraud hotline that you can talk to someone, lodge a complaint, and they will investigate issues regarding insurance fraud. If it's on Medicare, you need to contact the Office of Inspector General with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they have a similar fraud hotline. If it is with Medicaid, the Texas Department of Health and Human Services also has an investigative hotline.
Wow. So if they all have hotlines, then this stuff is definitely happening, right? I mean, they have
Definitely.
complete.
It's a real issue.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not just making this up.
Yeah, I promise.
So, Andy, why is it important to have a lawyer help you get this taken off your record?
Well, there are some things you can do on your own, like filing the police report, making initial reports to some of these agencies. But I think that consumers really need help with correcting their medical records in particular. That aspect of identity theft is the most difficult to address because the HIPAA law does not require removal of false information from your medical records.
It's weird.
Now, your healthcare provider is required to provide access to someone who can fix the issue. And there's a certain time period within which things have to be done.
Sure.
But you as the individual have to be prepared to get that data, find the right person, and then follow through with the appropriate demand letter language. And this is where I think that a lawyer adds value.
Right.
Yes, there's a lot of things you can do on your own, and we'll tell you that. Please take care of these steps for us. But an attorney will typically get a little bit better attention. Unfortunately, that's the way things go.
Right.
And typically we know who the correct party to contact is. And generally that healthcare provider or insurance company, hospital, they don't want to be in violation of HIPAA law.
Right.
So they're going to follow our request. And typically we find that they are receptive to our demand a lot faster than they are just an average consumer.
Right. And so tell us any kind of stories that you've heard about or come across when dealing with this stuff. I know you talked about the child in that had broken bones. Where do you think a lot of this stuff is happening? Is it happening everywhere? Is it just running rapid throughout?
Well, definitely the statistics speak for themselves in terms of this being a much more prevalent problem than I think any of us thought it was.
Sure.
And what I expect is that it's a matter of time before thieves figure out how to get a monetary benefit out of this.
Right.
Because one thing that they're very good at is sitting back and coming up with a way to trigger a refund of some kind. So my guess is that that's the next step in this crime.
Sure.
But, think about it this way. When's the last time you took your child to the doctor or to the hospital and the hospital said, hey, can you show me your child's ID?
Never, yeah.
Right. I mean, so as long
It's
as...
never happened to me.
Yeah.
I don't have a child.
There you go.
Well, and I think most of us would prefer that the hospital or our doctor focus on giving us medical care.
Instead of getting ID like at a bar. No, I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
So if someone walks in and they've got all of your data
right.
and they can spout out a name and do it with confidence,
Sure.
the worst thing that could happen to them is they get turned away. And the same thing for prescription medications. I mean, if they're filling a false prescription and then they want to go and sell it on the street, so to speak.
Sure.
I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that the pharmacist denies them in that moment the ability to pick up the script.
That's it. Yeah, and so the rest of the time it's a free ride. I think it's kind of shocking to me that someone will go through that. Like, you were telling me that there was people that actually go through surgeries under someone else's name. It'd be hard for me to be, given an anesthetic and then wake up and say, hey, you're not Paul Smith. It'd be kind of, I think it's just it sounds like a movie.
Well, and I would just say
like
this.
A horror movie.
One of the side effects of that's a great term, side effect of the Affordable Care Act,
sure.
Regardless of how you feel about it on either political spectrum,
sure.
It required the electronic recordation of a lot of medical data.
Right.
So things that might have been only accessible to someone in a doctor's office or working in a hospital, in theory, I mean, now that's subject to a target from a hacker.
Right.
So are we going to see an increase in this? I mean, I'm not an expert per se in identity theft, but when you see an increasing statistic from the Health and Human Services Department,
right.
Yes, I think this is going to be something we see a lot more of. And, my little small client with a child with fake broken bones is just kind of the tip of the iceberg to me.
I gotcha. So if you're just joining us, we're talking with Andy Tawari, with the managing partner of Tawari & Bell, which is a law firm here in Helotes, Texas, right outside of Bandera and 1604. Is a great law office out there. Now, Andy, you guys do a lot more than this. What are some of the other services that your law firm does?
Well, we're a boutique firm, which means that you can come in, get an appointment fairly easily.
Cucumber water, stuff like that.
You know what? We'll give you cucumber water, depending on what you need done.
Sure.
Well, our favorite drug of the day is always coffee, of course.
Gotcha.
But we focus primarily on business and real estate, both on the transactional side and on the litigation side. And as a result, we end up working with clients on a pretty broad range of issues. Things like this, like medical identity theft, pop up for a lot of our clients,
right.
and we cater to them as the need arises.
Sure. But I know you guys work with, I know you have Mr. Bell, and we've interviewed your managing partner, Mr. Michael Bell, and he does a lot of probate and estate law. And I know you even have someone in there that deals with divorces as well there at your firm.
Yeah, we try to be a little bit of a one-stop shop for our clients, and if there's something that we don't know, then we'll coordinate it with the appropriate expert.
Right, like Bobby always needs criminal. I know you guys don't do that.
I got a ticket this weekend. Can you?
No, they can't do anything with that. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining or being with us today. There's a lot of great information, and we always love to have anyone at your firm here at our Bobby and JJ Radio studios, because you guys always bring a lot of knowledge, and we definitely appreciate it. Now, I know you are waiving a fee, or your firm is. Anyone wants to do a 30-minute planning session, they can. Any listener right now, Bobby and JJ Radio, either on YouTube or SoundCloud or listening live, they can just call 210-417-4167. Again, that's 210-417-4167. Let them know that you heard this from Bobby and JJ Radio, and you guys will sit down and do a 30-minute planning session, whether it be any type of law that you guys cover, or you will definitely send them in the right direction. And if they want to get some more information about you guys in general, then go to texaslegalpros.com. That's Texas spelled out. And we're going to take a quick break. Be back with Adam Hetrick. Adam is going to talk about some of the regular type of identity theft, how you can prevent it, and what you need to do once it happens. This is Bobby and JJ Radio.